Hello BookTube, Sarah here and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reviews for July the 27th through August the 2nd. So I finished 6 books this week, very good. I'm super happy about that. And as per usual in these videos, the timestamps will be listed below for all the books that I'm going to talk about. So if you don't want to hear about a certain review or you're only here to listen to a certain review, please feel free to use the timestamps to jump around in this video. So let's jump in and get started. The first book that I finished this week was The Man Behind the Cop by Janice K. Johnson. This is a romantic suspense novel. It is a Harlequin super romance, number 1487. Originally published in 2008, this was part of my 40 Years of Harlequin project. 3.70 stars on Goodreads average rating, and I gave it 3.5 stars. This was a really interesting story. This one was actually, in some spots, very difficult to read. This wasn't I did list it as a romantic suspense in a way, but it is bordering more on just a contemporary romance, because although it does have a slightly, I don't want to use the term suspenseful angle to it, but there is a case that needs to be solved. This is definitely more about the relationship between Karen and Bruce. So Bruce is the police officer. I think this is in Seattle, so he's on the Seattle PD, and he meets Karen. Karen runs or works for a women's shelter counseling type of an organization, where women who are in abusive relationships or who have gone through perhaps rape or other types of sexual assault have come for counseling and such. So she's a counselor essentially, and she, helps women, and she helps get them out of bad situations and helps them heal from past bad situations. And she meets Bruce when he teaches a self-defense class at this counseling place that she works at. Anyway, that first night that he's there for this self-defense training, a woman who has been coming into the center, she recently left her very abusive husband, and she took her 2 children, and she decided to come in for this training session. And when she was leaving, her husband came up and actually almost beat her to death. She's laying in a coma, so it's very difficult to read in spots because of the spousal abuse aspect of this story, and that does play a big hand in this story. Bruce is pretty much trying to find the husband because, of course, he's not only, attempted murder on his wife, but he actually killed his wife's aunt when he went in to take his children, because the kids were being looked after by their aunt while their mother was in this self-defense training class. So, he's now wanted for murder and attempted murder, and he's on the lam with the kids, and who knows what he might do to those kids, with him being that unstable, obviously. So the bulk of the story revolves around them trying to find this guy. But of course it also delves into the relationship between Karen and Bruce. And the thing was, as much as this was meant to be, it's a romance novel. Let's be honest, it's a Harlequin romance novel. It dealt with some very heavy topics. And, I do appreciate when I see this in something that I think a lot of the general public considers these to be throwaway, not very, you can't learn a lot from these. These are candy type reads, pop or potato chip reading, if you will. You can read one after another. They're all pretty much the same. But, part of the reason that I'm doing this, and part of the reason I love reading these and talking about them here, is to show everybody that no, these are not just typical cookie cutter, he's a prince and, she's this, or, she needs somebody to save her kind of an idea. There are some very difficult topics in these books. Now, granted, a good chunk of them are light and fluffy and a lot of fun. And I'm not saying this one wasn't enjoyable, because it was. But like I said, it does deal with some heavier topics, so do keep that in mind. Yeah, it was good. My only issue with it was, as I was saying, is that the relationship between Karen and Bruce, for this being a romance novel, I could have done without it. I found the story of the abused woman and her husband, looking for him to be interesting. And, the fact that I kind of took pause in the fact that these two were almost making googly eyes at each other in her hospital room. And it took so much away from the story. It wasn't blatant. It wasn't anything like that. So don't think that. But, you know, and I've always wondered this with some of these more suspenseful type novels. If you're on the run from somebody or something like that, is a relationship or is, you know, finding the other person attractive really going to be near the top of your list? I personally don't think so. I've never been in that situation. I never want to be in that situation. But I'm just saying, you know, like it does, you know, I know of course it has to be in there because this is a romance novel. But sometimes I just wish that they would dial back on the romance just ever so slightly to let the actual story itself shine through. Because as much as this is supposed to be the story of Bruce and Karen, it is so much more than that. And it was so, so good. And I believe this one's available on ebook, so if anyone is interested in checking it out, please do go ahead. It does say here on the cover that it's part of the Count on a Cop series. This is not a series you need to read in any kind of order. Harlequin does these, and they just seem to all kind of fit the same thing. You're going to get a story involving a police officer. So it's just kind of, when you look at it, it's like a branding thing that you know what kind of a story you're going to be getting. But yeah, I did really, really enjoy it. I found it super duper interesting, and you know, I absolutely recommend that you guys check it out. The next book that I finished, the next book, sorry, I can talk, is A Scandalous Deal by Joanna Shupe. This was a historical romance novel. It was book number 2 in the 400 series. This was narrated on audio by Roxy Isles, who did a really great job on this one. Published originally in 2018. This is has an average rating of 3.86 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. For my summer romance book bingo, this is the book that was a 2019 Rita finalist. And this book was so good. Sorry, this one almost dropped on the floor. So this is the story of Eva and Philip. And the thing is, with this 400 series by Joanna Shupe, what I love about it is it's not your atypical Regency historical romance. This actually takes place in the Gilded Age in New York. Yeah, it's the Gilded Age because they're talking about electric light fixtures and things like that. So Eva and Philip meet on a steamship heading to America from London. And he is an American and she is British. And her father is a very well-known, a world-renowned known architect. And what Philip doesn't know is that what Philip thinks and what Philip doesn't, you know, what the truth actually is are two different things. Philip thinks that Eva's father actually designed this new hotel that he is building. He has major money. He is part of the 400, which is like some very elite group of, you know, wealthy people in New York. And, you know, almost like the Ton in London society. And, you know, he thinks that this very well-known architect has designed his building. Well, what he doesn't know is that Eva is, you know, of course, the daughter of this well-known architect. But that man, the man whose name, I'm sorry, it's escaping me at this moment, he is actually suffering from, even though they don't say it in the book because I don't think it was diagnosed back then at the time, but from what it sounds like is that he has Alzheimer's. And he doesn't remember Eva from day to day. He doesn't remember anything from day to day. And she's actually now taken over his designing. And she is a designer in her own right. But of course, she's a woman at the time period, and no one's going to listen to her. No one's going to think it's her. So she has just come over and she's telling Philip that her father's ill, not disclosing what kind of an illness it is, but that he's ill and she's here kind of on his behalf, even though the designs for this grand hotel are actually hers. And the two of them end up having a tryst together on the ship, not knowing who the other person is. And it isn't until they arrive in New York and she arrives on the construction site to meet him, you know, to kind of go over everything that, you know, they kind of go, wait a minute, I remember you. That night during the storm with too much wine? Yeah, I remember you. So yeah, and then the story goes from there. Of course, this is a hate-to-love relationship, even though they start off as being like, you know, having this romantic interlude. They, of course, once they meet each other, you know, don't appreciate that they both feel that they've been lied to by the other person. And, of course, society is, you know, dictating that she shouldn't be the one talking about this, that they need to get her father here immediately, and things like that. So, yeah, it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I do love me a good Regency romance. I think that they are spectacular. But when you take these historical romance novels outside of that atypical Regency London and you bring it to another location, to another time period, it's so much fun. And I just love, I'm such a history buff that hearing about all these different periods in history history is what really draws me to historical romance novels and historical novels in general. And Joanna Shupe is not to be missed. I will definitely be going back and reading the first one. I had meant to do that in August, but I'm hoping to do that in September for sure, to put that first book on my TBR so I can get to it sooner rather than later, because I am such a big fan of her now. This is the second book by her I've read. The first one was actually a novella. It was part of How the Duke Stole Christmas that came out last holiday season that I absolutely recommend that you check out, because that one was delightfully fun. But yeah, definitely check out this one if you have not had a chance yet, and I can absolutely see why it was a finalist for the Rado Award. Now, not only is this the week of the Summer Romance Book Bingo, like almost every other book, almost all the books that I still have here were on my Summer Romance Book Bingo. This was also the week of Christina Lauren. I read 2 Christina Lauren novels this week, so this is the first one that I want to share with you, and this is the Unhoneymooners, excuse me, of course, by Christina Lauren. Contemporary romance novel, originally published in 2019. This just came out this summer. Average rating of 4.05 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 5 stars, you guys. I absolutely love this book. For my Summer Romance Book Bingo, this was for the category of a standalone novel. At the end of this video, I'm going to pop up my card so you guys can see what my current bingo card looks like. So yes, this was fantastic. I'm sure you've all heard about this all over the place. Everybody is talking about this book. It was brilliant. There was so many laugh out loud moments in this story. There were some great poignant moments in this story. So this is the story of, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Olive and Ethan. And Olive and Ethan at the beginning of this book do not like each other at all. Her sister, her twin sister, is marrying Ethan's brother, Ethan's younger brother. And Ethan and Olive have never gotten along, like from day one. And of course, a lot more is revealed as you go through the story. But let's just, for the sake of this review, let's say that they've never gotten along. And of course, you know, the wedding is happening. This book opens up at the wedding. And this isn't divulging too much because it's on the back of the book, and I think this is what everybody's sharing in their reviews. I don't want to give too much of the story away, but there is a seafood buffet at the sister's wedding. The sister's name is Amy, and her husband-to-be's name is Dane. And there's a seafood buffet, and everybody except for Olive and Ethan eat at the seafood buffet and get brutally sick, like really sick. So Amy and Dane had this great honeymoon to Hawaii, and they now can't go, non-transferable, yada, yada, yada. So Ethan and Olive end up going in their place, and the story goes from there. While they're in Hawaii, they run into Olive's soon-to-be new boss. They run into Ethan's ex-girlfriend, and it was brilliant. There's a great running gag throughout the entirety of this novel that made me laugh every single time, where, you know, they would joke that Ethan doesn't actually know Olive's name, and he keeps calling her Olivia. But then as the story goes on, the names just get wackier, and she'll start calling him things like Eli or Ernie, or, you know, he'll say like Octavia or something. It's a great little running gag throughout the entire book that I absolutely loved. This book was unputdownable, honestly. I was reading this on Sunday, and I think I had something like 50 pages left of it, and I had to go to bed because I had to get up in the morning for work. I was already super late going to bed because I was sitting in bed reading this. And I put the book down, and I got up in the morning, and I had to get ready to go to work, and I was going to sit down with it, and I thought, I don't have time. I have to get ready for work and go. So, of course, because I slept in because I was up too late the night before. And the whole time I'm driving to work, I'm just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I have to wait all the way now until lunchtime before I can pick this up and finish it. And then I'm sitting there on lunch and I'm reading, and do I have it over here? Yes, I do. My bookmark, somebody decided to try and come over and talk to me. Now, I take lunch on like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so there's generally nobody in the lunchroom, and I'm sitting there nose buried in the book. I'm barely even touching my sandwich. I just wanted to finish this, and someone goes by, it's like, hey Sarah, how are you? And I had my bookmark, and I just slid my bookmark over. I showed it. It says do not disturb, I'm reading. And I looked up at the person, and they said, oh, sorry, I'll talk to you later. I'm like, thank you. Yes, it was that good. This is definitely going on I don't have a favorite shelf. This book will definitely be a reread at some point. I've already said to my mom as soon as she's ready for her next book to read, because she's a bit more of a slower reader. But I'm like, right now she's reading Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder by Joanna Fluke. But I said, as soon as you're ready for your next book, I said, you need to read this one. And what I really like about this one is that now that I've read this is my second Christina Lauren, and I've now read my third, because I finished another one on Friday, is that I can absolutely hand these books to anybody and feel completely confident that they're going to enjoy them, regardless if they enjoy adult content in books or not, because there is none in these books. There is adult content. There is, like, I shouldn't say there isn't any, because there is situations of adult content. Nothing is graphic. So I feel if my grandmother was still around, God love her, she would really have enjoyed this book, and I would have felt absolutely confident handing this to her and not felt at all like embarrassed about her reading something, or, you know what I mean? I think, and I really appreciate that Christina Lauren does this. Like, they are a duo of authors. And I love that they do this, that they make these books, because you don't always need the adult content. And it just makes me realize that you can write a really great romance novel without putting in those explicit sex scenes. Yes, they're great. Some of them are done fantastically. But I feel that there are so many books that rely on that to be a major plot point of the story. And that's not my taste. I know it's some people's, and that's fine. And there's tons of those books out there. But regardless, like, even if I'm reading a Susan Mallory or Susan Wiggs, I mean, even they have those graphic scenes, whereas these ones do not. And I really, really love that it's a book that anybody could appreciate and enjoy, you know, without feeling embarrassed or without feeling anything like that. So yeah, I highly recommend this. I know everybody's talking about this book. Everybody's loving this book, but I just absolutely am recommending this. If you have not picked it up yet, do yourself a favor and pick it up. I just absolutely adored it. It was this, yeah. This, I think, once I get my new bookshelves over the next few months, that's one of our game plans, like, cleaning up the living room a bit, and I'm getting brand new bookshelves that I'll be filming in front of. This one is going to sit front and center because it is that much of a favorite. This is now in my top 10 of all time. I'll tell you that. That's how much I absolutely loved this book. So yeah. So yay, the Unhoneymooners. I want to stick it up here just so we can all look at how pretty it is. There. All right, very good. The next book that I read was Echoes of Evil by Heather Graham. This is a paranormal romance book. It is Crew of Hunters book number 26. This was narrated on audio by Luke Daniels, published originally in 2018, average rating of 4.06 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 4 stars. For my summer romance book bingo, this was for my paranormal romance square. So this one is the story of Cody and Brody. Cody and Brody, isn't that cute? Her name is actually Dakota, but she goes by Cody. And this one takes place in the Florida Keys, which was really fun considering it's like, you know, it's August or end of July, early August, and, you know, the Florida Keys. So the story opens up with this ship that was found that had been sunk off the coast of the Keys way back during the time of slavery in the United States. And the ship had been a slave ship, possibly destined for Cuba or something like that, but it sunk. And now there's this dive team, including Brody, whose brothers are now part of the Crew of Hunters series. His brother's books were the 2 previous books to this one. And so that's often how these Crew of Hunters books go. You get like a trilogy, if you will, with like some of the same familiar characters. And then you'll get another new set of characters for the next 3 books. So this book, by finishing this one, I have finished this level of my Stacking the Series challenge. But there are still 3 more Crew of Hunters books that are new as of this year that I need to read. So I am not caught up on this series yet, and I'll probably add them to my Stacking the Series for next year. Unless I might get to one of them in October. October, I'm hoping to do like a paranormally creepier type month of reading, so we shall see how that works out. But anyway, back to the story. So they have found this former slave ship, and Brody is one of the guys investigating it, and they find a very recently deceased dead body. And this series, I absolutely love this series. I talk about it all the time, but in case you're new, the Crew of Hunters is a paranormal investigations unit, part of the FBI. As I always like to say, think X-Files. Only with a lot of different Mulders and Scullys. But the thing is, with the Crew of Hunters, you're not having that one person who believes and that one person who doesn't. These are all people who can see and talk to spirits. So this is very much, when I go paranormal, I mean spirits and ghosts and things like that. That's what the Crew of Hunters is delving into. And so there are ghosts that are talked about in this story. They talk to them, and, you know, then somebody else is killed. And, you know, Cody has been a friend of this second person who was killed, so she's kind of helping the investigation. Brody is a private investigator, which is how he kind of gets brought in. So there's no official crew of hunters agent who's in this story as any of the main characters, but the crew is kind of coming in to investigate it as well. Really, really good, highly enjoyable. This was a great addition to the series. Very creepy. You know, it had its aspects where it was very creepy, but I love the Florida Keys aspect. Heather Graham tends to write a lot of books that take place in Florida because I believe she's from there. So, you know, she really knows the area. Actually, years ago, she did a great series, many, many years ago, under her, like, probably way back in the early 90s. That was, I think it was called The Florida Civil War, and it was all about, like, it's historical romance set in Florida, like before Florida became a state, I think. So I highly recommend that you check those out. I've read one of them, and I keep meaning to get back and read some more, but yeah, great summertime read, highly enjoyable. The next book that I finished was Cold Case Colton by Addison Fox, excuse me. I'm stumbling over my words today. I apologize, you guys. This is a romantic suspense novel. It is book number 4 in the Coltons of Shadow Creek series. This is Harlequin Romantic Suspense number 1948, published originally in 2017. Average rating of 4.27 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this one a great deal. So this is the next book in the, of course, Coltons of Shadow Creek series that I need to read. This is part of my Stacking the Series challenge. This was also for, oh no, this one wasn't for my, yes, it was for my summer romance book bingo. I just didn't write it down here. This was for a new to me author. I have not read Addison Fox before, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So this is the story of Claudia and Hawk. And Claudia is one of the siblings of these Colton siblings who live in Shadow Creek. I believe it's Texas. And the main overarching plot for this mini-series, if you will, is that these 6 kids of this woman by the name of Livy Colton, she is in prison. She has committed some very horrible crimes, sex trafficking, drug running, murder. You know, that's just the tip of the iceberg, essentially, for what this woman has done. And she's escaped from prison. And that's where this mini-series opens up. Now, you don't necessarily need to read these in order, but I recommend that you do because there is a definite plot line that kind of follows throughout the series. So this is Claudia, which is Olivia's, I think, second oldest daughter. And she is back in Shadow Creek from New York. After she graduated high school, she moved to New York to pursue a career in fashion design. And after her nephew was kidnapped in one of the earlier books, and I don't want to give too much away for that, she decides to come back to Shadow Creek to kind of reconnect with her family. And she has no idea who her father is. These 6 kids are not blood relations. They're blood relations through their mother, but they all share kind of different fathers. Not kind of. They do share different father, or do have different fathers, I should say, excuse me. So anyway, she's back and she's running this boutique, you know, fashion boutique in this tiny little, you know, town. And Hawk shows up because there is some questioning of her parentage, of who her mother actually is the question. And I don't want to get too much into it, but I found it was very, very interesting. The relationship between Hawk and Claudia, though, was like almost instantaneous because they were going over some things and they were back at her stepfather's house. And they were talking about something, like she got very upset and she kind of went back to her old bedroom. And so he came in there to talk to her, Hawk did. And then her little nephew shows up and he's like, who's this man? And he, like, is it your boyfriend? And, you know, Hawk, because how do you explain this to a child that Hawk's a private investigator and blah, blah, blah. It's too much for an 8-year-old. You know what I mean? So he just kind of said, yeah. So then it kind of snowballs from there. And that's where their relationship kind of starts. So it was cute. It was very fast, but I tend to expect that in these books. These are not terribly long books. And, you know, they need to keep the plot kind of going. Although I do have to admit, it wasn't until a good chunk of the way through, it was at least 70 to 75%, before we got the adult situations that tend to, and they don't always happen in these books, not every time. But this one, they waited quite a while before that actually happened, which was refreshing. I mean, they had known each other for a few weeks before there was any sort of physical relationship between the two of them. And I found that a little bit more realistic, especially with, again, as I said earlier, with everything going on. You've got like somebody tried to run her off the road. Somebody tried to, well, I don't want to get too much into what actually happens to Claudia, but obviously there's something going on. There's some person who's after her for whatever reason, that, you know, they don't feel the need to jump into bed together, kind of an idea. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. This is a really fun series. Each book is by a different author, and I really love that, because you really truly do get different voices for all these different characters. So yeah, so I recommend this one. Again, you don't have to read them in order, but I would, because then you're going to get the overarching plot line for this one. And the last book that I finished this week was another Christina Lauren, and that was My Favorite Half-Night Stand. Oh, I really enjoyed this one. This was a contemporary romance novel. It was narrated on audio by Shayna Thibodeau and Deacon Lee. This was published in 2018. Average rating of 3.84 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 4 stars. I did not love it as much as I love the Unhoneymooners, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And throughout the entire reading of it, until about the last 15-20% of the book, this was a solid 3.5 stars, which was it's a very good rating from me. I mean, 3 is average. 3 is, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great book. It was highly entertaining. 3.5 is just that much higher, but like I said, the last 15 to 20% kind of pushed it up to that 4-star rating, because I love the way this ended. So I don't want to talk too much on the plot line of this one, because I didn't read the back of the book going into this one. I just decided to go ahead and read it. And I kind of enjoyed following and being surprised as I kind of went through the book. So the premise of this story, it's about this girl by the name of Millie and her 4 best friends. And her 4 best friends are all guys. And these guys, it very much reminds me of, I want to say like The New Girl, even though I've never watched that show, but The New Girl, where she lives with these 4 guys. But beyond that, it's like The New Girl meets Big Bang Theory. And I'm not saying that Millie's like the dumb one like Penny or anything at all like that. They're all academics. Like, all 5 of these people are all academics, and they all met because they all teach at the same school in Santa Barbara, California. But you very much get that dynamic Big Bang Theory-esque aspect, because all the guys are in very science-y type vocations, whereas Millie, which I love, studies female serial killers. I'm like, yes, please. I think that's just absolutely awesome. So she has quite a difficult upbringing. Her mother passed when she was young. Her father kind of didn't know how to fill those shoes. She has a younger sister who was 6 years younger than her. So her mom died when she was 12, so her sister was only 6. So she kind of almost took over that motherly role. And then when she turned 18, she was done. She's like, I'm done, and I'm leaving, and I'm going to school. And she very rarely goes back. And now her father has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. So she's kind of got that hanging over her head. And I think because of her mother's death at such a young age, she doesn't know very well how to talk about herself and how to express her feelings. So the friendship that she has with the guys is very superficial in a way. You know, they like to hang out, they like to go for drinks, they like to play Monopoly, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, then she, of course, starts to develop feelings for Reed. And they end up having a half-night stand. And it was a lot of fun. And then the story actually continues on from that. I mean, that part of it happens right in the first chapter. And then the story kind of goes from there with this big event that's going to happen and something that the group of them decide to do. There were some great laugh out loud moments in this book, much like the Unhoneymooners. Christina Lauren, they do an amazing job at romantic comedy. And again, just like the Unhoneymooners, there is adult content in this, but there's nothing graphic. It's all fade to black behind closed doors. Highly enjoyable. I absolutely loved it, and I fell in love with Minnie, and I fell in love with Reed, even though there were points at this book that I got mad at both of them, and we're like, just, again, it's like a hallmark of romance novels. Just be honest with the other person. Tell them the truth. But yeah, I mean, I think it obviously carried the plot line, and they couldn't just have them blurting it out, because the story would have ended way sooner than it actually did. It's not a terribly long novel on audio. I think it's just a little over 7 hours long. I borrowed it from my library. I was on the wait list for quite some time, at least a good 2 months for this one. And I was so super lucky that it came in at the very tail end of July. So I was able to read it, put it on my August TBR. But if you can snag a copy of it, maybe it's on Scribd, I don't know, I didn't look, or from your own library from Overdrive, or pick up, you know, a print copy if you can. Highly enjoyable, although not as good as the Unhoneymooners. And I I'd have to say, if I had to rank the 3 that I've read so far, the Unhoneymooners would be way up near the top. Then we'd have Roomies, and then this one. Now, there are still some more. Oh, and I read Dating You, Hating You as well. So I think Dating You, Hating You would come probably between this one and Roomies. So this one's still my least favorite, but at my least favorite, it's still got 4 stars. So that should tell you something. Christina Lauren has a brand new fan in me. I just saw on Instagram that they have a brand new book coming out early next year that I may have already put on pre-order. And they also have another book coming out called Twice in a Blue Moon that is coming out this fall that I may have also already have on pre-order. So I am super stoked about all those. I love the fact that they're writing all these. I know they've written a lot of other novels. I think they wrote an entire series, and they have a YA novel about a gay boy, or an LGBTQ, I should say, excuse me, let me be more politically correct, called Autobiography, I think it's called, and I'd like to read that one too. So those of you who have read that one, please do let me know your thoughts on that one. But yeah, Christina Lauren, new favorite author of mine, highly, highly recommend. Oh, and for my summer romance book bingo, my Half Night Stand got the square of a yellow cover. So there we go. So anyway, before I let you guys go, here is my current bingo card. Including, for the first book that I finished in August. So I still don't have a bingo yet, you guys. Of course, I'm not aiming for a single bingo. I'm aiming for the full card. So getting spots here and there are kind of fun. But as these weeks go on over the next few weeks, I will be getting bingos all over the place and filling in squares, because that's all I have left to read. And if you guys saw my my August TBR, you know my goal is to get the entire card filled. So, excuse me, I've got the hiccups. So anyway, guys, that is all that I have for this video. Please do let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or what was your favorite book that you read this week. And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so very much for watching. Bye, guys.